Hello and welcome to this 3D World tutorial. This is a tutorial that's meant to answer a question from a reader, and the question is regarding better ways to create sort of a thatched roof effect for cottages, or in this case kind of like a seaside tiki bungalow kind of thing. Um, my name is Eric Keller, and I'm going to take you through some of the ways that I tackled this problem using Maya 2012. I'm not going to use any plugins or anything fancy like that. We're just going to do plain vanilla Maya. So the goal of this is to add a nice looking thatched roof effect to the roof without having to go through all the labor of trying to meticulously paint effect strokes onto the surface. And I've just set up a really simple render here in Mental Ray that uses a physical sun and sky, a little bit of the ocean shader to create the water, and just kind of some simple geometry for the main image. So let's take a look at some techniques on how you can do this. And with everything in Maya, of course, there's more than one way to do this. This is just one way that I think that works very quickly and effectively. So the approach I'm going to take in this scene is actually to use hair. And I'm going to apply hair to the surface of the roof here, and then use the hair as a guide for some paint effect strokes, which will eventually be converted to polygons and rendered to create the thatched roof. So the most important thing about this piece of geometry for the roof is actually the UV coordinates, because the UV coordinates are going to determine how the hair is spaced on the surface. So the scene I'm using is called Beach Hut Start. You should be able to find it on the DVD that comes with the magazine, or download it from the 3D World website. And basically, I'm going to start by creating some UVs for my roof here. So I'm going to switch to the perspective view and zoom in here. And currently I just have some sort of basic, I created this, I originally created this shape from a cube, so the UV coordinates are not ideal at the moment. Let's take a look at them. I'm going to choose Window, UV Texture Editor, and here's my UVs. If I turn on the color shading, you can see the purple colors indicating that they're all overlapping. It's not a very good UV set. I need to create something where the UVs don't overlap, so that when I apply the hair to the surface, the individual follicles are evenly spaced and everything behaves the way I would like to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the top view in my camera and zoom in here. And I'm going to choose Create UVs, Planar Mapping, and I'm going to choose it along the y-axis. Since I'm looking through the top view, I could also choose camera, but y-axis seems to work just as well. So I'm going to do project and take a look at the UV texture editor, and this is what we've got. There now it looks resembles more like the shape that we're going to be working with. However, it's not perfect yet because we do still have some overlapping UVs. Since we projected from the top, what it means is that while these UVs are all laid out just fine, the UVs on these planes are all overlapping. Very simple fix. I'm going to zoom out in the UV texture editor, right click and choose UV, and just to drag a selection over all of the UVs. Press R to switch to scale and scale these guys down uniformly. There we go. Something like that is fine. And back in the perspective view, I'm going to right click and choose edge. Double click on this bottom edge here that selects the whole edge loop. And then I'm going to hold the control key, right click, and choose 2 UVs. And that's going to change the selection to UVs. So now I'm back in the UV editor. I'm going to scale up a little bit, and we can see now I'm pulling those UVs out. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this edge loop right here. Switch to edge selection. Double click so it has the edge loop selected. Hold the control key, right click, and choose 2 UVs. That switches the selection to UVs. You can perform some of these operations in the UV editor itself. I just wanted to make it a little bit clearer by doing it in the perspective view, exactly what I'm doing. So I'll close the UV editor. And now I'm ready to add the hair follicles. So I will select the roof, go to the hair menu. This is the dynamics menu set, hair, create hair, and I'm going to open up the options. I'm going to choose edit, reset settings, so it goes back to the defaults. And these are the options that I'm going to choose for my hair. I'm going to actually create just NURBS curves from the hair. So I'm going to choose output is going to be NURBS curves because I'm going to actually add the paint effects later on. I'm going to leave this set to grid so that it's creating the UVs based on a UV grid. And I'm going to set the UV count to 24, the V count to 24, and just create enough density to cover the whole roof, but not so much that it completely slows everything down. I'm going to move the randomization slider up to maybe somewhere around 0.5 just to give a little bit of random placement so it looks a little bit more organic. I'm going to make sure that dynamic is set, leave points per hair set to 10, and I'm going to set the length to, let's say, 2.5. That should work pretty well. And make sure place hairs into goes into a new hair system. Now I'll choose create hairs. And after a few seconds, the hairs will be applied to the roof. So I can close the hair options, and we can see here are the hairs in our scene. And you can see that because of the randomization, they're nice and randomly spaced. They should look somewhat orderly because this is a thatched roof created by people, not by nature. So it should be a little bit orderly. So what I want to do now is have these hairs lay down to create the roof. So if I press the play button, since the hairs are dynamic, they will fall and settle due to gravity. I'm going to stop the play head so we can take a look. And the main problem with this is you can see the hairs are actually penetrating the roof and hanging straight down. So that's not going to create a very effective roof effect. So I'm going to rewind, and in the outliner, make sure that I have hair system 1 selected. And I'm going to shift select my roof geometry, and then in the hair menu I'm going to choose make collide, and now you see all the follicles turn blue. Rewind, play again. It'll be a little bit slower, but this time you'll see that the hairs actually collide with the roof and then lay on top, and now it's starting to look a little bit more like a nice thatched roof. So at this point, I have some curves that I think would be a nice starting place for my thatched roof effect. I'm going to apply pin effect strokes to the curves. Now, if you're like me, you like to have a backup plan, especially when picky art directors are involved. So rather than apply the paint effects directly to these curves, I'm actually going to duplicate these and then hide my dynamic hair curves so that if I need to make a change later on, I can just sort of reapply. So now the hairs have settled in the shape that I want. I'm going to select the hair system output curves group, press Ctrl D to duplicate it, select hair system 1 follicles, hair system 1 output curves, Ctrl H. I might actually group these as well and just call this hair system. Okay, so there's my hair system. The other thing I like to do is I want to make sure that these guys have unique names so that they don't conflict with any of the other curves that are in the scene. So in other words, there's not two curved 2s in the scene. It's always a good idea to do that whenever you can, and so that you don't run into any naming conflicts. So I'm just going to rename this group curves, select the group, choose modify prefix hierarchy names, and just call this roof underscore, and that's going to rename the group roof curves, and then all of the curves are also called roof curves. It's always a good idea to keep things like that nice and neat. Okay, so now it's time to design the paint effect stroke. So I'm going to select the roof geometry here and hide it because we don't need it at the moment. I think the best way to work on this effectively, since we have a lot of curves here, is to start by designing sort of a single effective paint effects brush stroke, and then once we have it kind of looking the way we want it to, we can apply it to all the other curves. That saves a little bit of time and also makes the performance of Maya a little bit faster. So I'll just select any one of these curves, doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to open up the visor. So that's Windows, General Editors, Visor, and I'll pull up the visor here, and I'm going to the grasses folder in the visor under paint effects. That's grasses right here, and I'm going to select the straw stroke till it turns yellow, and make sure that I have a curve selected. and I will choose Paint Effects, Curve Utilities, Attach Brush to Curves. And so now I have a single sort of straw stroke. And the reason I do this to one stroke as opposed to all of them at once is just it's going to be a lot faster if I can control this stroke first, and then I can just share those settings with the other strokes. So now it's time to start playing with our Paint Effects attributes. Okay, the main thing that you want to keep in mind whenever you're working with Paint Effects is it's really all about experimentation. So it's a lot of twiddling of the dials and that kind of thing until you get the look that you want. The more you do it, the more you get used to what the various settings do, and the faster you are at coming up with effective strokes. But I'm going to sort of guide you through my process of turning this into something that looks a bit more like a thatched roof. At the moment you can see it's just kind of a big fuzzy piece of grass. This stroke is made up of tubes that go along the main stroke. So the thing that we need to keep in mind is this will be converted into polygons so that we can render in mental ray, and that means that we have to think about how many polygons we actually want to create, because that's going to factor into render time as well as also the scene performance. So we'll try and find something sort of a nice middle ground. So I've opened up the attribute editor and I want to select the straw 1 tab. That basically controls all the settings that make the stroke look the way that it does. The stroke shape 1 tab controls this individual shape node for this stroke, and then of course there's the transform tab as well. We're mostly concerned with the straw 1 tab. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, because of the scene scale is fairly large, I'm going to up the global scale just to make everything a bit bigger. And now it's just a matter of sort of taming these strokes. So I am going to bounce around in here a little bit. So I want to go down to the tube section, because the first thing I'm concerned about is maybe reducing the number of tubes here so that I have a little bit of a lighter stroke and it's easier to work with. So I'm going to set tubes per step down to about 2 just while I test the overall look, and then maybe I'll pump it up a little bit when we see how it looks when it's applied to all the other curves. The segments is the next thing I'm going to adjust, and I'm going to increase this because as I increase this, each tube gets more segments, making it more dense, but it also makes it a bit more flexible so it can follow the stroke a bit closer. So I might set this up to like maybe 24 to start with. And then of course I'd like these to be a bit longer, so I'm going to increase the length max. Let's put this up to, let's say, 0.6, and let's try for length min 0.3. And you can sort of see they're splayed out a little bit, so I can experiment by either increasing the settings, the segments. I'm going to leave that actually at 24, and see what I can do about controlling this behavior a little bit further on down in the palette. The next thing I do want to do, though, is thicken these guys up because they're going to be covering empty space. So I might set tube width 1 to 0.024 and tube width 2 to 0.012. So that just controls the width of the stroke along the path. And we have a little bit of randomization that we can add too. So I might just adjust width rand and width bias just to see what looks good. This is kind of a season to taste kind of thing. And let's scroll down towards the bottom because I want these things to lay a little bit flatter. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the behavior section. And under forces, which is under behavior, I'm going to increase path follow. And as I do that, the strokes start to align themselves a little bit more with that hair curve. So you can see I can start to control some of that behavior. It's still got a little bit of volume to it. I can also choose path attract, which kind of brings in the tips so that they meet the original curve. I'm just going to do that just a little bit just to kind of add some shape to it. And after I've adjusted path follow and path attract to get kind of the basic shape that I want, I can go up to the tube section and fine tune this by going under tube direction and adjusting elevation min and max. And again, I just mess with these sliders until it gets closer to what I'm looking for. I don't want something that's too poofy, so I'll bring this down, the azimuth min down, and adjust the azimuth max until I get something that looks a little bit better. And it's starting to look pretty good. So I'm going to scroll up towards the top, make these guys a little bit flatter. So at the very top, I'm going to adjust flatness 1 and flatness 2, just to flatten them out a little bit. And then I can adjust the twist to make them point, maybe so their normals are kind of, one of the fatter sides of the straw is facing outwards. So that'll help to block the light a little bit more. So now I have something that I think is working pretty well. So the next step, of course, is to test this and see how it looks when this is applied to all the curves. And of course, this is going to slow things down a little bit. And this is why I like to test on a single curve first and then apply to the rest of the curves once I have something good. So always a good idea to save before you do something like this, because this is one of these places where it can cause Maya to crash. I'm going to close the attribute editor for the moment. Make sure I have stroke 1 selected. And I'm going to go under rendering in the paint effects menu, paint effects, get settings from selected stroke. And now I'm going to select all the curves in my roof curve group. And now I'll just go rendering, under rendering, menu set, paint effects, curve utilities, attach brush to curves. And give it a few seconds because it's going to take a little bit of time. First thing I like to do, of course, is straighten things up a little bit. So I'm going to select all of the strokes in the scene and group them. And name the group Roof Strokes with proper spelling. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this roof strokes and shift select all of the strokes in the group. And in the paint effects menu, I'm going to choose paint effects, share one brush. So this means that all of these strokes are basically going to use the same settings, so I can adjust one of them and all of them will also update. Okay, and our final task is to convert these strokes into polygons so that we can render with Mental Ray. So I'm going to go in the outliner and expand the roof strokes group. Select all of my strokes. Shift select them all within the group. Wait a few seconds because it's going to be slow. Choose modify, convert paint effects to polygons. And now what I would like to do is collapse the roof strokes group. I'll hide it. And I'm going to shift select all these groups and choose edit ungroup. That's going to just get rid of all those little subgroups. So I ungrouped all of those groups and the result is individual polygon nodes here in the outliner. So I will press Control G to group those, and I'll just call that roof poly. Okay, so we can take a look here, and this is the rendered image. So you can see how the paint effect strokes came out. Now I I didn't do anything to the shader here. This is the shader that was actually created automatically when I converted the paint effect strokes into geometry. But you see, it's not a bad starting place. It already looks kind of like it just needs to be tweaked a little. But then you're on your way to creating a very nice image with a beach hut that didn't take too long to create using hair and paint effects. And I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.